In this video, we're going to talk about lighting for our fish that we have, and I'm doing that before I do any materials for it or shading, so I get a really good idea of how the light and dark work with this. Part of me would love to just go and make like a water refraction pattern on the fish. That's extremely hard to do in Blender, and I've seen some people do different methods for that. I'll show you one if you want to try that. That's pretty simple and straightforward. However, that said, I didn't find really any of the things very satisfying. But that's one thing that with working with a program like this, you want to be willing to explore and try things out more and more to play with them. So I'm going to take my outliner, because I don't really need it for this per se. I'm going to open up another 3D view. In this 3D view here, I have I have my camera view on. So if you toggle the 0 on the number pad, you can switch back and forth to camera view. In the navigation menu on the side, if you go down to where it says view, you can click lock camera to view. So for instance, if you have your camera view and you have this small rectangle here and you want to see more of what the camera actually sees, uncheck lock camera to view, zoom in, and then click lock camera to view. Now, when you rotate or move or zoom, you're zooming in based on what the camera sees. And then if I render that, F12 is a shortcut for doing a still frame render. This is what I get. And you'll notice right now, we don't have any lights in our scene. I'm going to go ahead and escape out of that. I'm going to shift to rendered view, shift Z, so I can see it. And that's also why I wanted the second one open, so I can see what I'm doing with my light over here. So right now, all the lighting in the scene is basically from the color of the background in the world that I have. And if I go into my world settings, and I always select use nodes, by the way, and I change the color here, it'll actually change kind of how it reflects on my fish and and stuff. I'm going to hit escape there. So over in this one, I'm going to add a light. I'm going to do Shift A, and I'm going to go down to where it says lamp. Some of these lights don't work in cycles very well. And so I'm going to go down to where it says sun. Use sun in cycles instead of Hemi. Hemi won't work. Basically, both of those do light in one direction. The sun is so far away that when the light hits Earth, you're really getting the rays in one direction as they hit the planet, and then they're scattered. Of course, they hit the atmosphere, but that's kind of the idea, is it gives you light in one direction. And then it doesn't matter where your light is. You could have it below your object or above your object. Since it's just sending light in that direction, that's what it does. I'm going to rotate this just a little bit so it's not directly in going straight down. That all depends on what your needs or wants are. That's okay to you. And I'm also going to do Shift A. I'm going to go to my mesh, and for this I'm just going to add a landscape and give something on the base here to work with. I'm going to scale it up a bit, and then I'm going to go like this. I'm going to do SZ, make it so that's a little bit less of a thing in the background. When you're doing your scene and you're setting up how you want things to look, you might want to also consider that providing a backdrop that kind of blocks out part of the background and stuff might be a good idea. Maybe I want to put some rocks or things back there or whatever, especially if I'm doing like an ocean floor. If I'm doing something like, or a lake floor or river, if I'm doing something like a fishbowl, then that's kind of going to be a little bit different in my setup. So right now what I want to do is just give kind of a refraction pattern on the ground there. I'm going to do S, Shift Z. I'm going to scale that out just a little bit more. And stuff doesn't matter if I have it like super detailed, that's okay. Alright, so now what I want to do is focus on getting a light pattern here. Unfortunately, for our lights in the scene, things that we could use in the Blender render mode don't work very well in this. And like I was experimenting with adding a texture or modifying how the light outputs, and none of those really got the effect that I want. So again, I would do this for a still shot mostly, although you could do it with the limited animation, but you're basically faking the surroundings a little bit to get what you want. So I'm going to do Shift A. I'm going to add another plane here. I'm going to take this and raise it so it's kind of out of the scene. I'm going to hit S to scale it up, and I'm going to scale it up quite large. I can see its shadow in the rendered scene over here. I'm going to do S again. I'm going to scale it up even more, blot everything out from existence. There we are. Okay, so with that plane selected, I'm going to go to my Shaders tab. I'm going to say New, and I'm going to call this Water Pattern. Okay, and we're going to see if we can change this a little bit so that we can see kind of a nice water pattern on the ground here, and also let some light through. So first of all, what I want to do is I want to add a mix shader. So I'm going to go down to my shader. I'm going to go to where it says mix. I'm going to put that in. I'm going to do Shift A. I'm going to add a transparent shader, and I'm going to put this on the other side. I can see partway through that shader now. Now I'm going to do Shift A, and I'm going to add I'm actually going to add a texture. I'm going to go with Voronoi, since it gives a very nice kind of interference pattern, or caustic, actually is what we want, caustic pattern for the white light reflecting. So I'm going to hit that, and right now I don't think it's small enough, so I'm going to increase this, and as I do, you can see I start to get light going in patterns on the floor there, and I'm going to keep moving it up until I get kind of what I want. Now we can take this, and so the Voronoi texture is taking this into a factor here and affecting how it passes that light onto the surface. If I want, I can actually do more mix shaders and things like that. So let's say I take these, and I'm going to just do Shift D. I'm going to lift this up here, and I'm going to actually use this one to replace that one there. So it's mostly transparent coming through. And then I can adjust the intensity of the light that I have in the scene as well. So if I right click on my light here, and right now I only have it as a strength of 1.3. If I move it up too much, it's a little bit overkill, especially with the lighting scheme that Blender uses. We could change that too, but it's kind of outside the scope that we want. I do want to get some brightness there, but I'm going to need to create something that actually maybe blocks more of the light here. So I'm going to move that back. So you want to play with the adjustment there as well. My background is really not very detailed, so it looks very kind of washed out, and the shadows and stuff like that are kind of bumpy. I could add to this with the risk of wrecking everything, but we'll see what we can do. I could actually add a volumetric shader in here, but I have to have a shape to put that in first. So over here in my 3D view, where I can see it just standard shaded, I'm going to hit escape there because that's not what I want to do. I'm going to do Shift A, and then I'm going to go and add a cube. And right now I have a nice cube in my fish. And I'm going to scale this up really, really large. that goes beyond all my area right now, and it's blocking everything. I'm going to add a material. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this from diffuse to volume absorption. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it into where it says volume. And then where it says density, let's do 0.1 and see what that does. And right now it's just darkened everything. I think I also want volume scatter, so let's do Shift A. Let's go to shader, volume scatter, Shift A again. Under shader, I want mix shader, drop that in, drop this one in. I do want to make sure I'm in volume. Density on this one is at 1, so I want to change that to, again, let's do 0.1. And now it's pretty dark, so let's take our light and see how we can play with this a little bit to change things. So I'm going to go and take my strength. I'm going to move it up quite a bit. And I should get a little bit more of a kind of a obscure background there, I think. Let's actually select the cube here and see if I can increase my density, what it does. And I might get more caustics than I want. Let's do volume absorption at 0.2. Let's do this one at 0.1. And so I can play around with those to try and get what effect that I want. You can actually use this to get a very kind of murky or foggy scene if you play with it. Maybe I want to add some textures to that as well and mess around with it some in the way that it looks. But you can play with it. Definitely not satisfied with it in general. But that is just kind of another thing. I'm going to go ahead and take my cube here and I'm going to delete it for right now. And you can see how much that affected the lighting there. I'm going to select my light. And I'm going to lower this down now. So that's probably closer to what I want, provided I build a background or something for it to be kind of non-obtrusive, make it look a little sheltered or shielded. So anyway, that's all I'm going to do for that particular one. Again, lighting is kind of fun to try out, play with, experiment with it a little bit. Do remember that if you're trying something like this, you're probably going more for a still shot to make it work nice. Not that you can animate it a little bit, but you're not building a whole world or scene around it to get the effect that you want. Whereas if we put our little fish in a fishbowl, it might work a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this one, and we'll look at another method for lighting in the next one.